Today's just the start of the Big 12 and Power 5 talk to come. Listen to JJ and Alex Monday on your drive home. Afternoons from 3 to 6 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Final segment of First and 12 here on this Tuesday, November 25th. KSL News Time, 8:51 p.m. Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry with you. And Alex, we laid out the schedule in the previous segment. Do you kind of miss that? Well, not miss, because the Big 12 hasn't focused on this in the new era of the league. Again, I worked in new era.
Thanks,
do you
Brady
think
Ormar.
that
Keep those hats coming. Get those Big 12 hats sent this way.
Do you wish the Big 12 would make a greater focus on rivalries this final week of the regular season?
We mentioned it last week, right? And for just a moment, and I'll replay it. How wild would it be? And by the way, what would the College Football Playoff Committee be doing today versus what they've done today this year if BYU and Utah were both one loss? Both of those losses had come to a number 5 Texas Tech, and their rivalry game that's traditionally, when they've been in conferences together, was always the last game of the year on that Thanksgiving weekend. Imagine what that game would be like right now as we're preparing for this week. Not having played it already, but waiting to play it. BYU, in all likelihood, because BYU lost to Texas Tech more recently, I think you would see a higher-ranked Utah, because you know how the committee likes to do it, or you know how like rankings like to do it. They go, oh, you lost before them? Okay, well, then we'll put you up a little bit higher. You'd have a one-loss BYU team and a one-loss Utah team and a one-loss Texas Tech team. You're potentially looking at like a Utah at number 7, like kind of around where Oregon is, BYU at number 8 or 9, right? Or maybe even 10, but probably more like 8 or 9. You'd have a single-digit ranked BYU and a single-digit ranked Utah with more on the – it was already the most that this game has ever been on the line this year. Imagine how wild it would be. And the committee, what would they do then? You know what I mean? I think at least 2 teams would be getting in this time around. You know what I mean? And it'd be about when BYU won that game. If Utah won that game. BYU won it this year, so let's say it's a 24-21 game down in Provo again, this final game of the year. Think about that. How much would you ding a 7th-ranked Utah after a loss to an 8th-ranked BYU? You would put BYU up next to Texas Tech. They'd play in the conference championship game. You see what I'm saying? Like, These things are set up differently. It's about when you lose in this system, unfortunately. It's not about necessarily who you lose to. That's been proven. But, yeah, it's an interesting thing. And then you think about the rest of the way, too. Think about the other games that would be on the line. Think about Farmageddon being played this weekend. Well, I love pretending like TCU and Baylor's a rivalry game, but yeah, again, games that had more on the line though. That BYU and Utah game would be nuts. Who's Texas Tech's rival? Is it supposed to be Houston?
Yeah, and that's half the problem with the Big 12 is that they don't have outside of a BYU and Utah.
They don't have
a great rivalry that really just says that's the game. BYU and Utah stepped in. And look, we're here in Salt Lake, so we've seen it and lived it. But, I mean, that game lives up to the price of admission every single year. But I just think it's always kind of an interesting thought because sometimes when you look at this slate that we see this week, it kind of makes you think, man, it'd be nice to have some of those rivalry games to close out the final week of the season.
Let me just bring up one more point before we get to our predictions here. But, there could be years where that BYU-Utah game or another rivalry game actually spoils it for a team who could be on the verge of making the college football playoff. And you have like a 3 or 4 loss or 4 or 5 loss. We've seen this in these rivalry games where a team who's not even ranked takes on a number 9 or number 10 rival team and they beat them. And then what? They go, yeah, we ruined your season. And then the Big 12's like, thanks a lot, bro. But that's the way it is. That's the way we prefer it. You like to have these games mean more, and they would if it were this case. So I'm all for bringing it back to have it at the last game of the season.
Let's get to our game predictions for this final week of the regular season here on First and 12.
First and 12 predictions, scores, blowouts, and more with Mitch and Alex on First and 12.
We'll close out the show with our picks here for the week before we get out and enjoy the holiday weekend coming up here with Thanksgiving. Let's start things off on Black Friday. Number 13, Utah at Kansas. Who you got?
Well, I mean, it's easy, I think, to just say Utah's going to beat Kansas. I think it's actually going to be the thing that we thought that Utah was going to do to Kansas State last week. I don't know how into it Kansas is. I don't even know how much of a spoiler they want to be. However, they do get to bowl eligibility with a win over Utah. They are hosting them in Lawrence, but I just don't see Utah coming up and showing up and ending the season on a bad note. There is a little part of you that goes, the committee's not going to let us in anyway if you're Utah. What's the point? Is there a little bit of that creeping up in the minds of these players? I don't think so, because the Kyle Whittingham team is pretty, stout like that mentally usually. But there might be a little of that creeping in, and maybe Kansas finds a little bit of that juice that Kansas State did last week. I'm going to go Utah, though, and I'm going to say it's going to be because I think they're favored by a touchdown or 2 touchdowns on this one. I think that they're probably going to get their plus. I'm going to say it's a 20-point win for Utah. It's going to be a 40-20 win for the Utes at Kansas.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Utah runs Kansas into the ground, puts up some big numbers on the ground. How about the Territorial Cup, number 25 Arizona at number 20 Arizona State? I will say Arizona State gets this one close. I think it could be like a 24-21 game. I think Arizona State's defense holds strong at home. I'm going to go with the Sun Devils.
I say better defense, but you know what? Arizona in Tempe or Tucson, right? They're hosting that one, aren't they? And it's
in Tempe.
I thought for sure it was at either way. That makes a difference for me because in my head they were playing at Arizona. So I don't – either way. I think that Arizona wins this football game. And I think it's because – they have found a different level, and I don't think Jeff Sims is nearly the talent that and I know he's been winning some of these games. Great. Awesome. You beat West Virginia 25-23. I think Noah Fafita goes out on top in this rivalry, and I think that they win this one. In fact, I think they win by a touchdown and a half. I'm going to say a 10-point win for Arizona State this weekend, for Arizona this weekend against Arizona State. How about Houston going to Baylor and Waco?
I'm going to go with Houston. Nothing else more to add there.
I think Baylor wins at home. I think Houston is I'm not going to say they're fake, but I think they have won games this year, and they probably punched up a little bit from their weight class, and I think that Baylor, maybe they take a little bit of heart with Dave Aranda sticking around, and he does too, and I think they get the win this weekend. I think Baylor edges out Houston, so we're split on that one. Colorado going to Kansas State. Oh, boy. Coach Prime, poor guy.
I'll say Kansas State. They get their 6th win to get to the postseason and maybe clinch a bid to go to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport.
Yeah, Colorado. How dare you? Don't say it like that. Colorado is already beyond not being able to make a bowl. I think Kansas State, that emotional game last week against Utah, actually has the opposite effect. They have an emotional pull to win one for the Gipper with Coach Kleiman coming out last week and defending his guys in Utah. I think they get one at home in Manhattan. I think they blow out Colorado there in Manhattan. Iowa State going to Oklahoma State. Put this one down for the game I want to avoid this week, but we got to pick it anyway.
Yeah, Iowa State, I'll go with them. No real reason behind it. Haven't dove into the matchup. I'll say the Cyclones.
Cincinnati, TCU. I do too, by the way. Cincinnati, TCU, real quick, Mitch.
I'll go with TCU.
I'll go Cincinnati. They pull one out there in Fort Worth. I don't know how much these teams have to play for at this point, but you got to break that losing streak for Cincinnati. Texas Tech at West Virginia. Tech rolls by at least 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Tech wins by, I think, 30. They're going to look to make a statement to try to get a first-round bye.
And at BYU goes UCF. How do you have this one, Mitch, down in Provo?
I got BYU winning by 3 touchdowns. I think the Cougs win big and try to get some style points in the win.
I think so as well. I think it's a 2 to 3 touchdown win for BYU and Kalani Sitake, and then we'll see how that thing goes again. All right, Mitch, another one in the books.
Well done.
We're gonna come back again. I think next week is our last one for the season.
Right.
So for Mitch Harper, Alex Brown running the board. I'm Alex. We'll see you next week, everybody.